Welcome to Life Happens, where Texans come to protect their legacy and prepare for the second half of life. Join your host, attorney Kim Hegwood of Your Legacy Legal Care, and our weekly guest as we navigate the challenges that emerge as life happens. Now here's your host, Kim Hegwood.
Good morning and welcome to Life Happens with me, Kim Hegwood, and our very special guest today is Laurette Foggini. Good morning.
Morning.
And so, Laurette, we're going to talk about some things that some families don't want to talk about. We're going to talk about when grandma has dementia, how to keep the children connected. And so, because I think a lot of families don't really tell children a lot, do they?
Not usually. I think they don't want to talk about it themselves, so it's really hard for them to talk about it with their children.
So why do you think, what prevents families from being present, with their loved one with dementia, so they, we know they don't really care to, talk about it because it's a lot of families like to stay in denial for way too long.
Yeah, I mean, I think dementia is such a hard topic for so many people. First of all, it's everyone's greatest fear, right? And they, I'm going to start to lose my memory. I'm going to start to lose my mind. And the families I see, a lot of times they're hoping it's not true. And, oh, maybe it's just a glitch. Maybe today was a hard day. I see them often comparing, oh, I always forget my keys. There's a big difference between what we have, on a daily basis, because we're doing so many different things and we forget our keys or lose our wallet, and actual when someone has dementia. And so I think there's a fear. It's also, dementia is not reversible. So when you have something that's not reversible, that's really hard to admit. And people wait until it gets pretty far down. Also, the person with dementia, there's a lot of cover up on their part as well. So everyone's in denial. It's not just the sons and daughters and nieces, it's also the people with dementia. So a lot of times they're covering it up as well. And not until it becomes really obvious do people say, yeah, there's something here.
I see a lot of times that the spouses cover for the other spouse a lot. And a lot of times they're the ones in denial. We had one of those recently in my office where the spouse was like, oh no, everything's fine. So, and it's not. And I think that's hard. And so,
yeah, well, it's life-changing, it's life-changing, not only for the person, but it's for the partner. It's for, it means that people have to step up, and it doesn't get better. It's going to get worse. So, when you start to see those signs, it's scary, right? Oh, now I'm going to have to take care of my partner or my parent, or, and so, yeah, it changes everybody's life. And it just, the demands become increasingly heavy as time goes on.
So at what age should you talk to a child about a grandparent that has dementia?
I think as soon as, kids are really perceptive, and they know the personalities of the people they love. So I think, as early as they're, it obviously depends on how much they're interacting with that grandparent. But if they're at the age where they've seen a grandparent behave a certain way, and that behavior is changed because of dementia, I think that's when you have to start talking about it. And depending on the age of the child, you're talking about it in a very different way. A 5-year-old, you're not talking about dementia as a symptom of Alzheimer's. You're talking about, as we'll talk about later in my book, you're talking about that it's a tired brain, that there's some changes, but grandma or grandpa still loves you and cares about you. So you're explaining some of the differences that they can see.
And so, do you think when you're thinking about talking to them about the changes, is there better words or things that kind of, I don't know. My first thought is how to lessen how bad it is, but maybe that's not the appropriate response.
Well, I think you don't want to give, children are interesting. You don't want to give them too much information. And I'm not an educator. I haven't studied this field, but I've been working with families that are dealing with dementia now for I hate to say it, but I'm probably getting close to 20 years. So it's been a long time, and I've seen so many families. So I think, you don't want to scare the child. You want to normalize the situation in a way that they understand that this person is still the person that you love. And you're going to see some changes, and you could point out some of the things that they've probably noticed. Grandma may forget our names. Grandma may forget, and depending on the stage of the illness, because of course at the beginning it's easy, right? They forget the names, but as it progresses, then they forget how to do a lot of things like, eating and what's food and what's not food. And I think, with children, if you don't make it scary, it's okay, and so giving, yeah. And I think it's a continuous process. It's the first phase of it is grandma might forget your name, or grandma might need help remembering to put on her hat before, whatever it is, her coat before she goes outside. As the disease progresses, they're going to see things that they may consider funny. And so I don't think you want to say, well, no, it's not funny, yell at them, but just say, because of grandma's brain is getting tired, she forgets the things that we remember. So if you see her, eating the salt or, something that's the soap, don't be scared. Just, gently tell them. So you're kind of guiding them through the process as things get worse. But it's really important for the adult themselves to realize that this is, children are actually better at accepting it. It's adults that are embarrassed and don't know how to handle it. Children, if you normalize it, they accept it. They're much more open to hearing that there's these changes sometimes than adults who are just mortified, like, oh my gosh, so it's, I think children should be included in the process from really when they understand people's personalities and can differentiate between, different individuals who care about them.
Yeah, I agree. I just think the more you talk about things, the less it has a hold on you, so it just helps, just to have those conversations, most definitely. So, when you think about, getting dementia, you go through those, stages of grief with pretty much everybody, because you're literally losing the person you love.
Mhm.
How do you help children, your grandchild, whatever, process grief, over the changes, that the grandparents experience? Because this is not grandma or grandpa anymore. This is somebody they don't recognize.
Right. And I think that's the key, that this is grandma and grandpa with a challenge. One of the things that I emphasized in the first book is that they're always going to love you. So it's just as if their, legs didn't work anymore. Would you not love them because their legs didn't work? No. Now their brain is tired. And so those are behavior changes, but think about it as their legs. If their legs didn't work, you'd love them the same. They can still, and really encouraging children they can still feel your presence. They still know you love them. And helping them with activities that may be different than what they were doing before. Grandma's not going to take you to the plays. Grandma may not even be able to come to your performance, but grandma loves hugs, and grandma loves when you're sitting there and holding her hand. And grandma loves to see your project that you made at school, so it's almost empowering to children it's empowering to adults when you can find those connections with people based on where they are. It's being present. Where are they today? How can I make this person smile?
Definitely. So we're approaching the holiday season. What suggestions do you have to encourage children with a grandparent with dementia?
I think that you're bringing things to the person with dementia, right? The roles are reversed now. So now you're bringing joy to that person. So I think with children, it's giving them that sense of responsibility. Like, you're Santa now, and obviously you're not going to, tell Santa doesn't exist. Now you're Santa. But I mean, just bringing, and depending on where the person is in the process, I mean, colors and projects, like I talk a lot about in the book, you're doing things. Well, I did these cards, these kind of care cards. You're doing things with them. It could just be sitting in their room and making cards. They may not be making the cards, but seeing your excitement and joy is very joyful for them. No one wants to be left alone. I don't care what stage of dementia you're at. No one wants to sit there by themselves. Yeah. They may not be able to participate the same way, but I think with children, it's really like teaching them how the impact they have on other people. So they can bring that joy to their grandparent by just being there, by taking that time, being in their room, being in their presence, bringing their whatever they're doing to them. There's a young man named David, and he started a foundation, actually, a nonprofit, where he delivers little those yellow ducks to people with dementia, because he noticed his father had early onset Alzheimer's. And he noticed how much joy his father got, and his grandmother, who also had Alzheimer's, from his toys. So he just played in the room with his toys, and he connected with them through that. And so now what he does is he raises money for Alzheimer's awareness, and he delivers these little rubber ducks to people in memory care facilities with pretty advanced dementia. Brings them joy. So, I mean, I think, it's always with, sometimes with children, it's showing it, it's you as the adult going in, which means that you as the adult has to be comfortable with mom or dad has dementia, and they're like little rubber ducks, that brings them joy. I mean, it's like the movie Benjamin Buttons, right? And it's okay. You have to be okay with it. I think what a lot of adult children do is this is my mother. How can I treat her like a child? Well, you're not treating her like a child, but you're looking at her as a person and where she is in that process. And you'll see a lot of people with dementia, they love stuffed animals. They have dolls, they love that feeling. And we have to be comfortable with it. We have to model to the children, like it's good. And they're not going to worry. Like, they love that grandma can play with a doll, right? When they're young. Maybe when they're a little older, it's a little different, but it's getting them comfortable with it by being comfortable with it ourselves.
So tell our listeners about some of the books you've written.
Well, I just happen to have them behind me. So I wrote 3 children's books, and they're all about caregiving. But the first one I wrote is actually about this same situation, and it's based a little bit on my life. When I noticed my grandmother was, what happens a lot of times, they become more and more isolated. The hearing's going, they're not following conversations. And I noticed in our big Italian-American family, my grandmother was not being engaged. People were just like running around, the kids and the adults and everyone. They were just like, it's a lot of, they just didn't, and I started paying attention to her. I was older at that time, and realized that by just focusing on her one-on-one and not asking, you can't ask questions about like, what'd you do yesterday? I mean, it really has to be a more simplified conversation. But we formed a connection that we would have never formed before. We started listening to the Grateful Dead. She was like, we weren't like smoking weed or anything, but she just listened to it. She didn't judge it. And by spending that one-on-one time, it was really great. So the story is based on that, a little bit of that relationship, but it's about a 6-year-old girl. She was a lot younger than I was. And her best friend, this is the first one, the song in Lola's Heart. Her best friend is her grandmother. She's 6 3/4, because every little kid's like, I'm 6 1/2. I'm 6 1/4. And she sees the difference, right? Her grandmother makes her lunch every day. She always puts a note in it. One day there's no note, and she gives her a bruised pear. And Lola, the main character, doesn't like bruised pears. And so she's mad and upset at first. And her grandmother explains, and that's when I put myself in Lola's head, like, what would make sense to me at 6 3/4? And she talks exactly about what I said. Some people have tired eyes and they wear glasses. Some people have tired legs and they have a cane. Well, I have a tired brain, so I forget things, but I'll never forget how much I love you, and I'll always be in your heart. So it's that message. And then the story obviously progresses, and then her grandmother gets to a point where she needs a caregiver, and she needs all this help. And so what Lola does is she connects, because oftentimes people with dementia, they are going back, and sometimes it's back in their language. So Lola's grandmother was from Russia, speaks Yiddish. Lola learns Yiddish, learns the song that they used to sing that her grandmother can no longer sing. So spoiler alert, at the end of the book, she connects, when her grandmother's really at the end, she connects with her grandmother by singing that song, which is the song in her heart. And her grandmother holds her hand, and she knows she's there, and she'll always be there. So that was the first one. I always get a little emotional when I talk about it, because it's, it is emotional. And then the sequel to that is this one, Lola and Peanut find their song. And this is after her grandmother passes. So she's about, I think 11 is what I had her at. So she's definitely understanding now this was part of Alzheimer's. It's a disease. Dementia is one of the symptoms. So now she understands this, but now she's like, now my grandmother's gone. So I was able to accept and bond with her before, but now she's gone. So it talks about the grief and how to process it. And so with this one, she actually makes a connection with this little miniature horse, and her grandmother had horses on her farm in Russia, and she finds the song again in her heart, and actually helps other people. She brings the horse to a memory care facilities and sees what it does to the people that she's visiting. So it's kind of taking your grief and also keeping that person in your heart and doing something that makes other people feel good. So that's that one. And then there was an in-between book, which isn't Lola. And this one was written for my brother. And this is called The Tale of a Hero I Know. And this was because my brother was a caregiver hero. He took care of my mother at the end of her life. And he wasn't planning on doing it. And he grew into this, his heart just grew and grew and grew. I mean, he was never the Grinch, so it wasn't that, but he really found this connection with my mother when she had memory loss at that point. And it was a beautiful relationship, and he was with her to the very end. And so this I wrote for him because when I said to him, "You're my caregiver hero, I'm going to make you a cape, which I did, a caregiver hero cape." He said, "Write me a book instead." I don't think he was serious, but I said, "Okay," because this was after I wrote Lola. And it was great. And this is also encouraging. It's written in rhyme. Children that heroes look all different, have all different skills. And to be able to give love to someone is, in my opinion, the best hero anyone could be. And I was really lucky because I actually found an old classmate of mine whose drawings I loved. And so we collaborated on all three, and it really did become a labor of love. Her mother had passed from Alzheimer's, so we were just like pouring our lives into it. And so, yeah, it was nice.
Perfect. So Laurette, how does somebody find you in the books if they're looking for you?
So I have a website, and it's my name, Laurette Foggini. It's like fog and gin put together.com. And then my email is Laurette, my middle name, Rosemary @gmail. And then my phone number is 415-730-0337. I'm also on all the social media sites. Sometimes I post a lot about this topic. Sometimes I don't as much, but I'm on LinkedIn. and Facebook and Instagram. I probably am on TikTok, but I'm not on that much. So I've talked through the process of my mother, taking care of my mother at the end. I talked a lot. You can go on there. There's a lot of topics about what we face when our parents are at the end. And yeah, it's amazing. I posted one on LinkedIn about making that decision not to put my mom back in the hospital based on her wishes. And it got like 100,000 impressions, just over 100,000. People were from all walks of life, like, oh my God, I had the same situation. Oh my God, it was so hard. So, and that's a professional network, yet people just identified with that challenge. So
definitely. Well, Laurette, I just want to thank you so much for being on the show. This was really great. And we look forward to having you on again soon.
Thank you, Kim.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of Life Happens with Kim Hegwood. Be sure to tune in every Thursday at 10 a.m. wherever you listen to your podcast as we navigate through the challenges that emerge as life happens. The content of this podcast does not establish an attorney-client relationship or constitute attorney-client privilege, legal, medical, financial, or any other professional advice.